You were introduced to open source in the OpenStack project. I was introduced in the Linux project. Um, Talk a little bit about, now that you've had more experience and have seen the way other communities operate as well. Talk a little bit about the values and the pillars of the four opens, because OpenStack for me was an interesting project at that time in 2013, because it was very focused on having the four opens, having that, again, not just an open source license, but a truly open collaborative type of environment where developers could come together. It was also interesting because in 2013, it was the hottest project out there, with many, many companies trying to get engaged and trying to do as much as they could. And OpenStack is an example back in that time period of a project struggling under its own weight, meaning that there were so many blueprints that were submitted, and so many PRs that were submitted for consideration, that those that had responsibility for doing the reviewing were overwhelmed, and it took quite a while. And that was a hindrance to the uptake of OpenStack because of its difficulty in reacting to so much participation and so much enthusiasm. So it had some great community and cultural aspects. It also had some tactical struggles. So talk a little bit about how that actually shaped what you see as being best practice in open source, and talk maybe a little bit about how you see some contrast in other projects, or the value of those four opens that you saw with OpenStack.
Okay, I think this is like 10 questions in one. So I will start with the four opens and then see where that goes. So for anyone who doesn't know, the four opens is a set of guiding principles that both the OpenStack project as well as the now OpenInfra Foundation and its project are truly guiding principles and the pillars that we rely on. The four opens are open source, open community, open design, and open development. And I really hope I didn't butcher any of them. So open source.
Sorry about putting you on the spot there for that.
Every now and then I say open collaboration as opposed to open community, and then I scratch my head and I correct myself. And this is just how close those two words are, both in terms of meaning and not just the actual letters that make those words. So open source is kind of the more defined one out of the four. So we usually don't really spend much time explaining it. We can go into licensing and the availability of the source code and what you can do with it. That open source is kind of the pillar that you couldn't really leave out of the four opens when it's about open source in any shape or form. So open source is about the license and the availability of the code and artifacts. And the other three pillars are really what make collaboration up, I think, in the sense that you have open community to really state that a community has to be a welcoming environment. They have to be open to have anyone joining and participating, and work on the shared goals that particular community has. And when it comes to the other two, open design and open development, those are pointing to the processes that the communities are using in terms of making sure that all the information and the process is open and available to anyone to participate. Like if you have a new feature in mind, how I had to go and introduce the feature at a design summit. It was not a mandatory step, but it was one of the forums where you could talk to the team and say that, oh, I had this great idea. And then after that, creating the blueprint, talking to the team, and really anyone who opened that Garrett review page with the blueprint, they had a say that, oh, I don't like this design. I think it is there's a flaw in it, or I don't think that it's compatible with most of the similar APIs out there, and it's not a great idea to defer that much, or for whatever reason that they didn't like something in it, they had a say in it. Everyone was able to see what's going on and contribute to why it is a good or a bad idea, or how you could implement it in the most robust and good way possible, based on the understanding that we all had at that time about coding best practices and design principles and whatnot. So in order for your community to be truly open, people have to be able to find the information and participate in the conversation in terms of where a feature idea is coming from, what it is, how it's planned to be implemented. And every now and then someone might show up and say that, oh, hey, can I participate in the implementation? We desperately need this thing too. And maybe if we do it together, it will be done faster. So people can only do this if the whole design process is open. And then open development is when you actually agree that, okay, this is what we are going to do. This is how it's supposed to look like. And this is roughly what needs to change when it comes to the implementation phase. And again, the implementation phase have to be open as well. OpenStack has been using Garrett as code review system. You can do the same thing on GitHub or now GitLab and many other places. Git is I think these days, one of the most popular version control systems out there. So many communities are using either the same tools or very similar tools and processes, but it has to all be open. Like when it comes to contributing code, you make a change that turns into a commit in Git, and then you upload it for review, which means that anyone is supposed to be able to see what that change is, whether they are part of the project team where you're proposing this change, or just a random person at some random part of the planet who has internet connection and stumbled onto the link for whatever reason. And not just having access to see what the change is going to be, but also being able to add comments and say like, okay, why did you implement it this way? Why did you choose to, I don't know, name your variable to something that's like 3 sentences long? It's not the greatest idea. Like maybe you should add some code comments, or maybe you should not add some code comments. Just write really clean code. There are many people out there with very different experience in terms of how to write code, very different opinions, and it sometimes gets almost religious. But at the same time, again, people have the opportunity to say something, and the author of the code change has the opportunity to learn a lot. Like, even if a suggestion is not going to be used, you're still learning something about someone else's coding style. And, maybe you realize that, oh, actually, I like that too, but it didn't occur to me that I could do it that way. And when it comes to the 4 opens, for the OpenInfra Foundation communities, it is really fundamental, because I think everyone understands at some point that if you keep things back and you keep things closed, it's just going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your community. And at some point, the realization comes that, okay, maybe that's not the right way to go. If I want to keep using open source, maybe I should participate, and if I participate, maybe I should not do it with half steam, because it's not working that way. And that's really the first step towards support communities to grow and build environments where open collaboration is truly possible.
Right.
And you kind of need those four opens for that to be possible. And I think we will have a lot of episodes that are going into the details of what happens when a person or a company or a community is not operating in a way that fits into the four opens. I'm not saying that the four opens is like the Bible and everybody has to go by then, but you can, at the same time, you can realize, you can see when something is operating in a way that would not be compatible with the four opens if you checked, and how it's not working because one of those fundamental components are missing.
Right. And yeah, and like I said at the beginning, the point of the podcast for me is really the other three pillars besides open source, right? It's really about what are best practices for open collaboration, and why are those best practices the beneficial for everybody? Right. I think control is one of the key points that we see, where it's a struggle because it's somewhat of the nature of individuals and companies to want to control their destiny, want to control something that they're actively working in. And it's the removal of that control and the letting go of that control that actually provides for a community with a level playing field. Because by definition, if a company has more control than other companies in the ecosystem, then that's ultimately not going to foster a good community. And it is the network effect of all of those different companies and many different companies working together on diverse needs. And it's the aggregation of that is so often really the best benefit of any given open source project. Right down to the technical excellence, right? And how you do the test cases for across the board. So yeah, that's, again, what I'm hoping to get out of the discussions that we have with the various folks that we can learn from their experience as we bring them in and talk to them on this podcast.